Welcome back to another edition of Lupus LA's Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Joining us today is the chronically fabulous Marisa Zeppieri. Now, I don't just say she's chronically fabulous. That is the title of her new book, which is coming out in just a few weeks. I don't have a copy of it yet, but I do have a picture of the cover. So it looks really cool. And we're very excited to have Marisa with us. She's also known by the moniker Lupus Chick. And my mother would be very upset if I was calling you a chick right now, but that is Lupus Chick is seen by over 400,000 people, and it's become a real guide for people with lupus and chronic illness. And so welcome, Marisa.
Oh, thank you, Adam, for having me. I'm very excited. And I actually just saw my hardcover for the first time about 2 days ago. So you'll be getting yours soon, but it looks good.
Oh, there it is. There it is. That's
looks
better
fabulous.
Than my picture. So how does that make you feel when that comes to you?
Yeah, when I opened that box, it was, I was very giddy. It was surreal. It was 3 years of work, like finally in one moment. It was really neat.
Yeah, I'm sure. So tell me, I know you were diagnosed in your early 20s. And so where was the transition from lupus patient to lupus advocate? And if you want to tell me a little bit about your early diagnosis too, so you can kind of give me some backstory.
Sure. So I really had symptoms since I was 8 years old. My mom and I sort of went back and looked at, when did I start showing like any symptoms? Like very tired, in a lot of pain, always needed a nap, not like my friends that were running around. I would have issues with the sun and sores and rashes. And I was in the doctor's office a lot, so it was a little strange. But this is going back in the 80s. I was never tested for lupus. And then in my 20s, when I was in college to be a nurse, I lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time. I was actually crossing a street and I got hit by a drunk driver as a pedestrian. And I spent the next year of my life basically in the trauma unit and in recovery. And it was really that trauma that was the trigger that all of these symptoms I had now came out at one time. So when they started to send in the specialists, like the rheumatology and the infectious disease, I think it was a lot easier at that time because they had so many specific symptoms to sort of pinpoint and say, okay, what could this possibly be? So I really had that diagnosis within 3 weeks. But if you think about it, it had been 15 years really at that point.
Right. And not really the way you want to have to get diagnosed from such a traumatic, injury. And I'm assuming that it's interesting that they discovered that and not sort of connected everything back to the accident. I would have thought that that's where your story could have gone, where, oh, well, this symptom is related to the accident versus, this is something different.
I think they originally thought that. I actually talk about it in my book because I had the fever and I'd had a small stroke. So at first they were thinking, okay, does she have an infection somewhere? And then is the small stroke because I actually had a head injury from being hit. But when I guess those things didn't line up, they said, okay, there's something else going on.
Mm-hmm. So you get diagnosed with lupus, you recover from the accident. And then how long was it between sort of that period till when you said, I want to do something, for other people with chronic illness?
I really had a good, I'd say 6 or 7 years there where, okay, I should preface this with I'm 43. So we're going over 20 years here. So if you go back 20 years, we did not have like social media. We barely had like any support groups when I was first diagnosed. So I really wasn't out there. I tried not to tell anyone that I had lupus only because the first few people I told, they were like, what is that? I've never heard of it. Can I catch it from you? And so I almost was very embarrassed. And I was also really sick. I spent those first few years in and out of the hospital in a wheelchair. I couldn't work. We had a nurse coming to my house. So I just sort of secluded myself and I was very isolated and I didn't let anyone know what was wrong with me. My friends just sort of thought I disappeared there for a while. It wasn't until I was about 28, 29 years old that I started to get a better handle on what lupus meant for me. So I knew what my symptoms were every day. I was able to better control things with medication and with different therapies that I tried. And once I started to feel a little bit more control and like I was actually getting my life back, I was able to start working a little bit and go out with my friends every now and then. I started talking about it more. And then I realized, going back into like sort of my dating myself here, but like, do you remember we used to have like pen pals, which was through the mail, and
Yeah.
I wanted to meet other people. And here I am in this city of like 1 million plus people. And I only knew one other person with lupus. And these blogs started popping up. And I thought, what if I just create a blog where people from all around the world can at least connect with one another and we can sort of go through this together. And that's how it all started.
And so what was the first post? What was that like? Was it really a cathartic experience, or were you really nervous about putting yourself out there?
I was actually more excited. I've always been like sort of out there. So that didn't bother me. But I actually remember my first post, and I remember that I likened, at that point, my goal was, how do I survive this? I was still in survival mode. I still was getting very weird symptoms, and I would have very long flare-ups. And I remember describing it as a backpack with these very heavy weights in it. And it was like, no matter what I tried to do in life, I carried around this extra weight on my shoulders that other people could not understand if they were healthy. And that's I feel like that resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah. I think that's a really good description. I think, because you can still walk around, you can still do things, but you just have this extra burden that people don't always see it. And I think that's really hard.
Right.
So what was the response when you started? Was it always called Lupus Chick when you started?
It wasn't. It was actually originally called Lupus Survival Guide, because my goal was, how do we survive this?
Okay. Yeah. And so how did it get received?
It was good. This is going back here to Blogger. Do you remember Blogger?
Right. Yeah,
this
sure.
was so long ago.
Right.
So we had, a couple of people a week read it, and then I'd get some comments here and there. And then slowly it just started to grow and grow. And then at the same time, a few years later, I started a career in journalism. So I really learned more about writing, and then we start getting the social media and, really connecting with people. And I had a dream one night, and in my dream, it was like Lupus Chick was just given to me. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's like, you're going to change it to this, because my attitude at that point wasn't, okay, how do I survive this? It was like, I'm going to thrive and I'm going to kill it no matter what. Like, yes, I have this, but there's too many things I want to do in my life, and I don't want to be known as the girl who just gave up. I think a lot of people thought I would just give up because things were so bad for so long. So I wanted to change it, and we rebranded to just I wanted it to be encouraging, positive, motivating, and educational. Everything that went on there, it had to meet those 4 pieces of criteria.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, that's really what this podcast is about. It's about inspiration, and it's about being positive and showing people who may not think that they can come out of that hole and get that backpack off their back, or at least make it lighter. Right. I think that's really important. And so did the rebranding sort of give you a new infusion of interest and new life?
It did. I think because it also sparked something in me. I think the look, the feel of it, we started to do a lot more on social media. This was around the time that things like Hootsuite and things were available, so that you could actually access more people and engage with more people without having, because we can't sit on the computer or whatnot 24 hours a day. But within that first year, we were seeing like 10 to 15,000 visits a month. And then we went up to like 150,000. And then it just grew and grew up. You said it earlier, it's about 400,000. So I knew that whatever came to me in that dream was exactly what was supposed to happen.
Now, does that add a tremendous amount of sort of responsibility that you feel to those 400,000, people? I mean, that's got to be, I think inspiring to you and exciting, but what does that do in terms of, your level of responsibility and that kind of thing?
That's a good question. There is definitely, because I don't like to leave anything unfinished before I go to sleep at night, but I have to balance it with the reality that, I am a caregiver to my mom. I'm a lupus patient. I work, when my health allows. I'm a spouse. I have a house that I have to take care of. And I also have to go to treatments and rest. So there are absolutely days that, I fail at things. I miss things and I can't do everything. And I think for a long time, I really stressed myself out and lost a lot of sleep and probably put myself in a lot of flares because I felt like I was supposed to do it all. And now I just realize if I do the best that I can every single day, like that is the absolute max that I can do. And I can't worry about it every single day. Like I only have so much energy every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I try to help everyone,
So when you put up a post, what's the typical, how many comments do you get from a post typically?
I think it depends what type of comments it is and what platform it is. On Instagram, we can get anywhere from 15 to over 100 comments on a post. Facebook, the same thing. The great thing is like we have such an amazing community that's so engaged is they'll typically respond to one another. And a lot of them are friends off of the platform, or they've told me, or they've written to me and say like, I met my best friend on here, and we share we share posts with one another and we offer advice to other people. And that's great. And I try to let them know every now and then, like, feel free to have this conversation amongst yourself because there's days that I can't do it all,
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's
and
amazing.
they're very understanding.
Yeah, no, and I think it's amazing what has transpired through social media and through that type of communication in the lupus world. I mean, I was also diagnosed in the 80s, and to see what happens now to a newly diagnosed patient and how many resources, and I think for better or worse, I think that there's some trouble you can get in on the World Wide Web,
Right.
and you can go down a black hole. But I think that there's, sites like yours that I think are really feeding that inspiration, and help bring together some of these larger lupus organizations, because I think some of these organizations, there's a lot of politics involved, and, it's really, I think focusing on the patients is really such a critical part of the services that we all provide.
Yes.
And I think you're doing that. And I think the book is really an extension of that. Where'd the idea from the book come from? Was it organic, or did somebody suggest it? How did it come about?
I think it was a couple of different things that sort of all collided at one point. I knew about 10 years ago that I wanted to share my story, especially being in journalism. And I started, I would ghostwrite here and there for people on the side. But, with Lupus Chick, I always felt like everything I learned or anything I tried, whether it was a medicine or a supplement or a therapy or a product, I wanted people to know what happened, through it, so that someone that's newly diagnosed doesn't have to make 10 years of discovery and mistakes and things that didn't work if we can just tell them exactly what works. And I love to provide information. So I felt like, let me take all of the things that have worked for me and all of the tools and the techniques and the tips with the stories of, times in my life when it's been horrendous and I thought I was going to die, but I want people to see how, we rally and we get through different things. We get through these challenges. And I just wanted it all neatly packaged in one thing, because I get asked a lot, and I'm sure that you do as well. We get a lot of the same questions over and over again. So it's easy if I can just say, really everything that I've learned and everything that's in my brain that I love to share is right here. Let me give it to you.
Yeah. That's perfect. Well, I know it's going to be a big success. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. I want to talk to you about the beautiful piece of art behind you and some of the other things you do. So we'll be right back.
Lupus LA provides financial grants for lupus patients in the greater Los Angeles area, up to $500 per calendar year, to cover costs for everything from electric bills, medical copays, medication costs, and more. Please contact our staff for further information. Call 310-657-5667 or visit our website at lupusla.org to support the efforts of Lupus LA.
Welcome back to the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. We're talking to Marisa Zeppieri, lupus chick, and the author of Chronically Fabulous. So welcome back, Marisa. Tell me, let's get to the art in the room. I want to know all about your art, and it's a beautiful picture, by the way.
Thank you. We are in my art studio right now. Before I went into nursing, I got an art degree. I love to do like art therapy. I stepped away from it for a long time, and I started to do it again a few years ago, but with COVID, just being home and having time and needing a way to get rid of stress, I was so scared and terrified of COVID, as I'm sure everyone else was. I started to paint a lot. And then I started to host online art therapy classes through Lupus Chick, which was really neat. So this is for myself, though. This is a huge canvas. I don't know if it translates with me sitting in front of it, but this is Frida, who I love. And I actually put in my book because Frida went through so many challenges and health issues and was really bedbound and was sick and really in bed like most of her life. But she didn't let that stop her. I mean, we still talk about her today, and she's still so well known and inspiring years after, no longer being here. So she's just one of my favorites. So I'm painting her. I also do a lot of custom art for lupus patients. So this was a butterfly tattoo that I just did for someone. So, because cool. Obviously with the butterfly. But yeah, I just love art. I feel like we all need a way to relax. I do a lot of music therapy too, but really art is it for me.
So the art therapy, I think, is really, I've heard a lot more about art therapy recently. We actually did a program with Donna Jordan. Michael B. Jordan's mother is also an artist and a lupus patient. And we're working with her on an art therapy program for our population. Maybe we should really team that up, because I think it's so valuable, even for people who have no art skills whatsoever, like myself. Just painting with my 4.5-year-old is like, it's a real cool release.
Yeah, it is. And I think the neat thing about art, when I did the art therapy class, is people from all around the United States and Canada joined in, and some of them were painters, some of them were not. I just let them know, like, this is the size canvas, these are the colors you need in the paintbrushes. And it was like, sort of like a painting with a twist, but at home. And I just went step by step, and to see all of their paintings at the end. And it was so relaxing. They all talked to each other and sort of shared their stories. And they were all like, wow, I can't believe I painted this at the end. I've never painted anything in my whole life. And it was so relaxing and fun. Like, we need that, because most of our day is, why do I feel like this? What's this pain? Did I take my pain medicine? What doctor's appointment do I have? And you just need a mental break.
Mm-hmm. I think that's totally fair. I think that's what the hard part for people who don't have a chronic illness to understand is that thought process, that it's continuous, because I've asked people who don't have a chronic illness, well, how do you feel this day or that day? And they're like, I don't know. I didn't even think about it. But that's the thing that I always tell people. It's like, you can't stop yourself from thinking about it. So you're a former Mrs. New York.
Yes.
Tell me how that pageant world has, influenced your lupus or your treatment, or, what did you learn through that experience?
I think I learned a little bit on both sides of the pageant coin. So I first entered a pageant when I was 20 years old, and it was part of the Miss America pageant system in Broward County. And I enjoyed it. And then all these years went by, because then I was diagnosed and I was sick and, dealing with all of that. And then when I was 36 and I moved back up to New York, I met some women that were in the pageant system here, but now it was the Misses for people that are married. And I really liked the fact that Mrs. pageants are not talent focused. They're charity or volunteerism focused. So you have to have a platform. And I thought, I already have this platform of lupus, and what better way to get it out there? So the neat thing was, being Mrs. New York and presenting that title to like government entities sort of gets your foot in the door and lets you talk about lupus. And being able to do that, I was able to actually work with the government here and do different things on the books with them, and have meetings in front of other government entities and tell them about lupus and the population that we have here in New York. So I don't think I would have had those opportunities, without being in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
But I also realized that it is very stressful. And, I think just as a woman and just being under that pageant umbrella, it is, there's pressure on what you look like, and you sort of have to be on. And I did it, but I don't think I would ever do it again, just because I feel like we have so much pressure anyway, being chronically ill, that at this age or this point in my life, like I want to take pressure off of me.
Right.
So,
Right.
It was a great experience, and I'm thankful for it.
Now, you mentioned that there was a charity element to the Mrs. New York pageant process. I know Lupus Chick also now has a charitable element. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when I actually became Mrs. New York, I turned the Lupus Chick into a nonprofit here because I was always very education focused. Something that I realized just even with my own story was, I spent 4 years after getting an art degree. I spent another 4 years in college because I wanted to be a nurse. And right at the very end is when it all went south, and so now I have a nurse taking care of me. And I can't, go and continue in the field that I really wanted to be in. And I've heard these stories where people are diagnosed and either they're having trouble working and going through treatments and affording college, or they have to then go back to college when they're in their 30s, 40s, or 50s because they can't do the career that they were originally trained in because of their health. So I thought, what is the one thing I really want to focus on? And for me, it was education and being able to help people pay for education. So we do a stipend twice a year, and they can be in a university, in a community college, but they can also be in a trade school or a certification program, because a lot of scholarships are designated only for like 4-year programs, but that's not realistic all the time for people that are chronically ill. So I sort of wanted to open it up. Anyway, if you're learning something online that you're going to be able to do from home, like we had a graphic design candidate who was taking the whole program online, great, but she can work from home after that and take care of herself. So it was really important to me to do that.
So how many people typically apply in a year for these scholarships?
Well, so we have it open right now. We'll give out the 12th one in May. And right now we have about 10 applicants. So I would say between 10 and 20 each round. And we typically pick 2. So it's hard because I want to give it to every single person. Yeah.
No, I'm
but
sure
it's all
that's
on
really
donations,
difficult.
So it's, how it is. The more donations you get, the more people you can help.
Yep. No, we do the same thing with our fellowship program. It's, we would love to fund 3, 4, 5 fellows, but, raising the money is challenging. But it's what I always find interesting is when you tap into something like that, you realize, you're hitting the tip of the iceberg in terms of what the need is out there. But I also, on the flip side, anybody you can help, I think it makes such an impact in their life and their care. And, hopefully that gets paid forward, and I really think that, much like you've done, I mean, your story is emblematic of this. I think paying it forward is the way that lupus patients really support each other. It's really, especially because I think the medicine is so different for each patient that it becomes, you really need that network to figure out, okay, who are the people that suffer from the same types of things that I suffer from, and how do they battle with it and deal with it, and so I know you've also done a fair amount of work with pharmaceutical companies. Thanks, GSK, our wonderful sponsor of the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. But, what have you found with your work with the Defense Department, the pharmaceutical companies? What is it? Let me be more specific. So what is it that they don't get from the lupus patient side that you really have been able to bring to their attention?
I think over the years, a couple of things that have surprised me, but I feel like they're getting a better understanding of it, and that they want to learn more. It's like they want to soak it all in. Is they don't really understand what the day-to-day issues are for us and the challenges, because like you said, people that are healthy don't typically think about doctor's appointments, taking medicine, and okay, how much can I do? Because I know today, the way I'm feeling, I maybe have 3 or 4 hours of good energy that I'm going to be able to get as much as I can, and then I'm done. Like, they don't think about those things. I think one of the most surprising things for me, working with some pharmaceutical companies, because I will do a lot of speaking for them, is when I meet their scientists, a lot of them have come up to me after, or researchers, and I've heard this more than once, and they'll say, "You're the first patient I've met in person that I can ask questions to." And it's so strange to me, because I think to myself, wow, these people have an amazing job. Like, their job is to try to create a new medication that could potentially change my life. And yet they've never interacted with a patient, and they don't understand, like, what we deal with every day. I remember being asked, "So you have fevers like all the time, like every single day? Or, how often, like, do you feel like you forget something?" And I think to me that was like very eye-opening, because there
I've
is
heard that
like
from
such a
scientists.
disconnect.
Yeah, I've heard that from researchers too, where it's like, oh, I've never really met very many lupus patients or any lupus patients. And you're like, wow, first of all, I find it incredible that they want to devote their life to curing a disease they don't have a connection to. I think
Right.
that's speaks to the wonderful puzzle that lupus is. And puzzle people who solve puzzles are exactly what we need. But I think it's interesting, maybe with something we can bring to the pharmaceutical companies, sort of a meet the patient aspect for the scientists. Because I do think what I have found is the scientists that I have met, once they've met a lupus patient, that motivation, kicks into overdrive a little bit.
Definitely. I remember seeing, like, there was one conference where there was probably 150 people in one room, and it was like all of their scientists from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the Q&A just kept going and going, because they wanted to ask more and more questions, because they never had that actual interaction with a patient. And I was so excited, because like you said, you would think that they have some sort of link, maybe a family member or a spouse or a friend that made them go into specifically lupus, but for a lot of them, they don't. And I think once they actually hear how we're so challenged every single day, they just want to help even more.
Yep. I think that's totally fair. And I think one of our jobs, I think, as lupus patients and advocates is convincing the doctors of the future and the scientists of the future to focus on autoimmune illness. And, because I think there's some other more tempting lures out there. And I think, that's a really important thing. So we have the best and brightest looking into the causes and treatments and cures for lupus, for sure. So tell me, what's the plan for Chronically Fabulous? When's it come out? Where can you get it? What are you going to be doing to promote it?
So Chronically Fabulous, I'll show you the hardcover.
Yep. There we go.
It's on pre-order right now. So you can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Broadleaf Books, who is my publisher. And then the actual published date is May 4th, and it will be in stores around the country. So, we're just doing, like, we have a book launch group. I'm going to be doing a lot of giveaways with different organizations. Also on Lupus Chick, we're going to sort of be doing like a reading sort of book group after it comes out for those that want to join in. I think that will be a lot of fun. We specifically picked with the publisher for Lupus Awareness Month for it to come out. So hopefully just a lot of interviews. And I just think it's just a great way, even though it is my story and it talks about lupus, I really tried to write it for anyone that has any type of chronic illness, because even though they're all different in their own way and we all take different medication, the thing is that we struggle with, like, relationships and finances and our mental health, like, those are the same across the board. We all deal with those challenges. So I just think it's a great way to bring more awareness during our May special month.
And what is the best piece of it? What's the one nugget in the book that you feel like is the best piece of advice? I don't mean, everybody's got to go out and buy it and read it and do all of that, but what's sort of your favorite takeaway?
Oh, let me think about that. That's a tough one. I think for like a tangible piece of advice, I go a lot into journaling, and I really go into specifics of how it changed my life in terms of letting me better understand what my triggers are and how to lessen like flare-ups and symptoms. But I think if we're talking more on like a spiritual or mental health sort of journey, I think it's understanding that first of all, like I like to celebrate everything. I celebrate every birthday for like a month. I'm just so grateful that I'm alive. Yeah. So I feel like I should have been dead like 10 times. So I am going to celebrate every single thing for the rest of my life. I get so excited, right? But I feel like we need to celebrate our small wins, and we often forget what those are. And that's another reason I tell people to journal, because you do things today that for us are small wins that for someone that's healthy, it wouldn't make any sense to them. But, maybe your small win today is that you were able to take a shower and spend 3 hours with your children, but maybe yesterday you weren't. So I think we have to constantly remind ourselves, especially when we're in a really bad flare up or things look really dark, that look at all of these things that we've overcome in the last couple of years. But with brain fog and just with us as humans and our memory, we can't possibly remember all of those things. So I always encourage people to make a list and write them down and go back and look at them and remind yourself once in a while just how much you've overcome.
I think that's great advice. And I think small wins are great. I think this book is going to be a big win. I think I want everybody to go out and get it and take a look at it. We'll promote it through Lupus LA. And, I think we found a nice new partnership here with Lupus Chick. Check out lupuschick.com. I want to thank Marisa for joining us today. I think it's been really enlightening and inspirational. And thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.